But I am aware of some apps that you can download now as a parent, and it will give you alerts if a site comes up that's inappropriate.
I started researching how do I ensure that when the children are online, they're safe. So I do an audit of their devices every once in a while to go through the cookies, go through the logs, and see where they've been. And then also I found a way within the iOS, and most of the operating systems will have both the Symbian or the Android, will have in the settings how you can actually time specific apps and the device itself.
Yeah.
So once I do that, I know you've got 30 minutes on there to do research for work. At 30 minutes, it goes off.
That's
You
high
can't,
tech.
you can't access
That's
it.
high tech. I don't think a lot of the
regular parents
here-
can do
It's
that.
actually quite simple
we'll
to do,
come
though.
back to you to teach us how we can do that and which platforms have these protocols. Hello, welcome yet again to another Digital Rights Africa podcast where we discuss everything data protection, privacy, child online protection, intellectual property, and data governance in Africa. Today, we will be talking about child online safety, and we'll be talking to the parents yet in another edition. I'll just let the parents and guardians that we have here introduce themselves, starting from my left.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rachel V. Brown, a lecturer and also executive director of the Every Mickle Foundation. I have 350 beautiful children that I'm responsible for.
Welcome, Rachel.
I wish I could say the same. I'm Kweku. I am a broadcast journalist with Asasi Radio, a branding consultant, content creator, and a father of two, one preteen and a teenager.
Wow. And my lady.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Olympia Emmanuel. I'm a restaurateur and a parent of 5 children, 2 adults and 3 toddlers.
Okay, I can tell that this is going to be another interesting segment. I'm a parent myself. My name is Teke Akwete and your host for today, a parent of 1. So I think that you are all ahead of me in this area, but I don't know whether I can say I'm a parent to a child now. My son just turned 18, so yes, I know I look good, but but today I really want us to, talk about children's online safety. From where we sit at the Africa Digital Rights Hub, we have seen a number of concerning issues, particularly around children in developing countries and the protection that is given to them. We have noticed challenges around knowledge of what to do, because a lot of these children are under the parentage of adults who are supposed to guide them. And unfortunately, when it comes to technologies, a lot of us sometimes seem to be behind. And usually the children take the lead in that area. Of course, with what we've seen with COVID as well, we have seen that increasingly children are going to have to necessarily have access to all kinds of digital platforms to enable them engage, whether it's education or entertainment or even learning. And the internet has been a very brilliant tool. But we are equally aware of the dangers that exist. And so as parents today, I just want to really have a sense of where you sit when it comes to your children engaging online, because no, we're not at the point where we can just take the devices from them and lock it up and say, don't engage. You will really be, depriving your child of growth in a significant way. So as parents, what are you really doing when it comes to children's online safety? I'll start with you, Liz.
Children's online safety. It's difficult. I would say it's a challenge, However, because you need to give them access to their tablets, to their computers, they need to do their assignments. Teaching has changed over the years, so they do need their devices. What we have done is control the time. So there's a timetable at home, even though they have a timetable at school as well. There's a strict timetable during school days where after dinner they are allowed an hour, and then on the weekend they have to do their chores, they do their activities, and then of course then there's the tablet time. You're not always there to enforce it, so they also get away with it. But where I realized there was a danger was about a year ago when I realized that online feature, there's a feature that is active where you're online and strangers can actually jut in and interact with their games. So I turned that feature off because one of them said, "Hey, somebody popped up on my screen. A white man popped up on my screen." I was like, "Okay, show me where you went." So it was funny when I tried to search the games that they were looking at, I couldn't find it. But apparently there are keywords that the children can't search, and these things pop up.
Wow.
So it's a larger problem than we can actually think of. So it's either you say that they are restricted to the web entirely. I have not been able to find a security feature per se that would assist me to do that. So I actually educate them on the dangers online. They're as young as the younger ones are the ones I focus on right now because the adults are 22, 24, they are okay. But it's the 4, 6, and 8 who are very inquisitive and they go online. They don't restrict themselves to YouTube Kids. No, they don't want that.
They don't want that.
No,
yeah.
they actually know how to go to the browser and put in the search words. And that's where the danger is.
Ishra, father of 2.
Yeah, so I'm a bit lucky in the sense that I worked in IT security some
You're
20
the
years
smart
ago.
geek, so you know what's up.
This was at a time that there was a forecast that around this time of our lives, devices would become what we called at the time promiscuous devices.
Yeah.
Because I can connect and instantly share a file to each one of you at the same time. And you could also interact with my device at the same time. So I was always aware of the dangers of children online. Also, because of the environment that I worked in, you came across case studies of how pedophiles had preyed on children. So way before I had my first child, I was aware of the danger. So here's what I did. I started researching how do I ensure that when the children are online, they're safe. So I do an audit of their devices every once in a while to go through the cookies, go through the logs and see where they've been. And then also I found a way within the iOS, and most of the operating systems will have both the Symbian or the Android, will have in the settings how you can actually time specific apps and the device itself.
Yeah.
So once I do that, I know you've got 30 minutes on there to do research for work. At 30 minutes, it goes off.
That's
You
high
can't,
tech.
you can't access
That's
it.
high tech. I don't think a lot of the
regular parents
here-
can do
It's actually quite simple
we'll
to do,
come
though.
back to you to teach us how we can do that and which platforms have these protocols. Rachel,
So for my children, it's a bit more, I think, complicated because there's so many of them. It's among 6 different children's homes. So what happens most of the times is the older ones are the ones that are making sure that everything is okay. We also have limited devices, so they all have to share devices amongst themselves. We also check the browsing history. But I am aware of some apps that you can download now as a parent, and it will give you alerts if a site comes up that's inappropriate. We have site blockers installed on the laptops and the tablets as well, just to make sure that they're safe. But I mean, even us as adults, things have popped up from time to time.
Oh, yes.
And you're just like, woo! So imagine for children. But we're working on it. It's a work in progress.
where do we begin? Because it's a very scary world, and I think what baffles me is the fact that as as regular parents, right, we probably will not let our 5-year-old maybe out of this door. We will not let them out of the gate. And yet, as parents, we seem to think that giving them access to devices, especially the young ones, let me just say young being below 6,
Right.
giving them access to devices without supervision is the right. I mean, it's easy, right? It's cool because we've all been there where they're disturbing you, throw the device at them,
convenient.
they look at it. But
Yeah.
supervision is really key in all of these things, especially for young children. So how have the supervision been for you? Are you people able to do it at all?
Supervision, third party, most of the time, because mommy goes to work, daddy goes to work. There's the older siblings are either at university or at work, so it's the nanny. And on the weekend, of course, there's parent time. But in as much as supervision is required, I think as well sensitizing and teaching the children
Yes.
what is right and what is wrong right from that early stage. They know the right touch, the bad touch. They must just know it. And then they're able to also do the right thing. I believe very much in that level of education first. And then the supervision, of course, adds on to it. So they are responsible right from the start. And they tell on each other. Yes. they are responsibility accountability partners. Yes. That's additional security. This person went to this place. They're not supposed to go there. They will say that this person was playing this game, this shooting game. I don't like shooting games. So it won't be there. So yeah, the games are they are educational games that you download on it that they don't have to have the internet on. And occasionally you just block the internet itself at home, the broadband, and then they are compelled to use the activity games on the tablets, and this for the toddlers.
Thank you, Shira.
For me, supervision started with training, just like Eliza. And I realized that children model what you do.
Yeah.
So for me, the children's access to device was early on, but it was devices that had preloaded stuff and had no internet connection. Internet connection probably started from about age 7, 8, but it was limited. And it was limited to only where they could go to. So there were specific apps that were downloaded already on there. In addition to that, you block the ability to access the App Store. So they are unable to add anything to what you've already put on there. So it was very, very, it was like walking through a maze for them growing up. As they crossed 10, then I started, giving them a lot more freedom. But even then, there's still limits. So limits by way of how long you spend on there, what you're allowed to do on there. And if I'm going out at a time that you're supposed to, again, we all have to work, we all have to go out. But the housekeeper who helps us raise these children is fully on board and is empowered to stop them using the devices if they go beyond the time they're supposed to use them. Also, they have to check on them. Now, when I'm not at home, I occasionally would call, just to say, what are they doing? Where are they? Can you see what's on the screen? And sometimes I randomly will say, okay, time out, whatever you're doing right now, hand the device over to Auntie, and Auntie puts it away. And when I come back, I do that day's log
That's a
audit.
lot of work.
It is a lot of work
Right?
because it's a complex world that we live in, and you cannot leave it to chance.
No.
COVID was it was a curse and a blessing, because when the children started schooling online and they were leveraging, Zoom and the likes and Microsoft, Google and all that, there were moments where their classroom was hacked. I happened to also be working from home.
Yeah.
Now, on those occasions, I would know because I'm working and they're not too far. They're within an earshot, so I'm keeping an ear on what was happening. And I could tell that what was going on the screen was not class. And so I'll quickly dash out of the study, come out and have a look, and then I will break into the class and say, hi, teacher, sorry I'm breaking into your class, but I've observed this, and I think you guys need to do A, B, and C. And like I said, I've just been lucky to have a bit of IT security knowledge in that regard. But it helped me understand what they get up to when they're with their friends.
Yeah.
Because my older son, in fact, the two of them are, the two boys, they're very close.
Close, yeah.
And so they play among the same circles. They share the same friends. They had this small group in class while they're on Zoom. They're using the internet connection to be playing games online somewhere else.
100%.
You know, but it helped me map who my kids are playing with.
Yeah.
What kind of influence they're getting from them. And with that knowledge, I'm able to guide them and say, look, it's okay to play games, but there's a time for everything. And life is about choices. Choices lead to actions, and actions lead to consequences, positive or negative. And it's something we always talk about. But I don't think we're out of the woods, because there's always something new. They're always finding new ways to get around it.
Yeah. Rachel.
They've both touched on a very, very important point. Supervision, yes, but it has to include self-supervision. And they can't self-supervise unless they understand why and what and how and where and all of these things. So she touched on that earlier. She said she explains what's right and wrong. I think we also need to tell them why.
Yeah.
Expose to them the dangers of these things, how it can affect them physically, developmentally, all of these things.
Yeah.
For my kids in particular, I think with the self-supervision, it's important because there's so many of them,
Exactly.
you know, so it's kind of hard. The older ones do step in as well. But I think as parents or guardians, we need to understand that children are not children in the traditional sense anymore. They're smarter than us.
That's scary.
They're smarter than us. They
are.
really are.
Yeah.
They're
are.
smarter than
I
us.
think we were dealt a raw deal. Like, we were
100%.
suppressed, because I think
Yes.
that when I look back, I realized that we were asked to, be quiet, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And I realized when they were growing up, the one word that we used in the house most, stop.
No.
But we stopped. Stop and no, yeah.
Stop and
we
no.
Stopped, we stopped saying stop, and rather decided to guide them. These kids, my kids, they find they're tasting music. I didn't know who The Weeknd was. My
Right.
10-year-old told me who The Weeknd was. He knows Anderson .Paak and Bruno Mars. He knows, and one thing I also said earlier about modeling what you want.
Right.
I'm a journalist. I like to read serious stuff. Don't care if my kids grow up and become boring, but hopefully they'll find a funny bone as they grow up. But they are more than likely 9 out of 10 times to go and seek content about news. They're asking you, they're reading about the weather. They're reading. So these are things that become conversations for us every day. And that's how I know where they're going.
So
Right.
engagement is key. But I mean, all of you are not the average parent
Right.
in the room. So let's bring it down
Yeah.
to my hometown, okay? Or let's take it to the village and to the parent that is working in that farm to make some money and then send their children to school. And these children also need that exposure. What should they be looking at? What should they be thinking about? How should they be approaching this issue of safety? You know, because like you're saying, for parents, even in our time where we had people were going to their parents, if you remember, you go and buy one book 3 times, Geo, and then you ask for gra and fee. Geography book, you
break it apart.
You break it up into 3 books and take money.
So you can get some extra money for chocolate
exactly.
and ice cream.
And so how should, and in this very complex world, especially where the dangers of doing geography is not just that, but these children are getting themselves sometimes into challenges that they may not be able to reverse. They're being bullied sometimes online. They may not have anybody to talk to. How should parents that fall outside your norm approach these issues? This is a tough one. You deal with many children. I just want to start with you.
I think the first thing is creating a safe space for your children. He mentioned that we were very restricted growing up. I know that was the case for me. Very strict parents. But a space where they feel understood, where they feel safe talking to you about things, because there will be things that they don't understand. They might need explained. And instead of them Googling it or going to a friend and asking and getting the wrong information, they should be able to come to you, I
I think I'm the type that will scream
Ah.
before so maybe I'm one of the bad
Not bad. That's something you can work on. Can work on that. I think the safe space is one. The second one is being as educated as possible on the internet. The third thing, I think, is to change our conception or thoughts around the internet as negative or something that they're negatively exposed
So
to.
don't do it.
I've seen so many times where my kids have learned things like coding, like gamification on their own
Yeah.
without my knowledge.
Yeah.
And it may seem scary, but it's going to be a lifelong skill for them. Might help them to become employable. There's all these good things as well. So I think creating a safe space is important, and also monitoring as best as possible for the average parents.
I think that you're spot on when you say education. And there's several forms of education. I mean, on my show, the Sassy Breakfast Show, and on specific shows, though, we do make learning around things like this very possible. We bring professionals to speak to some of these issues so that the average person who doesn't have exposure, understanding of how the world of the internet works, will be able to get a sense of where to go. What are the themes to look out for? And when you know what themes to look out for and where the dangers are, then you are better informed as to having the conversation.
Right.
So again, like Ben Carson's mom, you don't need to know how to read and write, but you can guide the children to make sure that they're
values.
avoiding the values and the things to avoid.
Still values.
The other thing I would add to this is that even for people who, like us, sometimes we have to catch up with the new things. So you must have this ability to be honestly naive and say, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Or
My
I don't
first boy tweeted my first ever tweet when he was 4, inadvertently holding my phone. I'd registered but never tweeted, but he did.
What did he
What was the
tweet?
tweet? Yeah, I wanted to know
It was
too.
a bunch of gibberish.
Or was it?
It was.
Maybe it was the solution to life.
You never know. You never know. But yeah, so you have to be humble enough to say, teach me how you did this.
Right.
And be able to then follow the process and see whether, okay, is this a red flag? If it's not, if it's a green, then life goes on.
Yeah.
But if you allow them to see that there's this two-way channel between you and them, then the safe space is established.
Yeah.
And then they can talk to you about anything.
Anything. Liz?
In answering that question about the remote areas and parents who live in the remote areas, we must
Not
be
just
mindful
remote, yeah.
that not all homes and parents can afford the devices in the first place, nor even the internet access. So I think in communities there are ICT centers that they can all gather at, and at these centers, if that is the case, then the managers of these institutions, these centers, should be responsible for the monitoring and supervision when they are in there, and make sure that they are accessing the right information. But otherwise, yes, average parents, each parent is responsible for the monitoring and educating their children and the content that they are accessible to.
Yeah, I think our time is up, but I just want to just do one final sweep. And I want you to just use one sentence of what you think is important in this space and advise our viewers on what they should pay attention to when it comes to child online safety.
Okay, so for me, I think openness, honesty, and just as I said earlier, a safe space. What's really essential is to pay attention to what is important to your child, because that's the development of them themselves. There's nothing that we can do to shield them from the world. They exist in it. The only thing we can do is guide them as they go through.
Sure.
For me, above the board, anything that doesn't happen above the board is a red flag. Encourage them to do things above the board. And more importantly, understand that you're not always going to be around. So you give them the best training you can and pray for them.
Wow. Prayer.
I agree with my colleagues here, and yes, we need to educate them and constantly monitoring.
Well, so you've heard it from the parents. We don't have it all covered. Whether you are the parent that does not even understand this technology, or the one that doesn't believe you have it grounded. From our participants here, we don't have it covered, and we may not be able to cover our tracks every day, but there is a lot that we can do, and that is in instilling in our children the sense of values. They need to know what is right. They need to know what is safe. They need to know where the dangers are. And it's very important to continue to engage with our children on that. And one of the biggest takeaways for this is that we need to create a safe space in order for our children to interact openly with us on the engagements on these platforms. And by doing that, we will be able to know and understand what is happening, especially when they get exposed to the dangers that are out there. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for
ladies
having us.
and gentlemen. And all too soon, we've come to the end of another Digital Rights Africa podcast. I look forward to having you join us another time. Thank you.